we're here to talk about a heavy topic, some heavy topics. I first want to start by saying that the World Cup is in Qatar. FIFA feels fine with putting a World Cup in a place that has human rights issues. I like to say that there is iPhone workers, people who work at an iPhone factory in China right now that were locked in due to a COVID outbreak. They couldn't see their families.
Making what?
Who knows? Not enough. Not enough. And this all stemmed from a conversation about the man, the myth, the legend.
Can I get him in there?
Mike Vick.
There it is.
Mike Vick.
Give your jersey a turn around so they know it's Mike Vick. There we go. Yes, sir.
This was going to start off as an episode about have people paid their debt to society. I remember Mike Vick getting back into the league. You were an Eagles fan at the time. You can talk a little bit about the hate that Andy Reid got for signing Mike Vick.
It's fucking ridiculous, man. Like, no one in the NFL wanted to take a risk on Michael Vick. Andy Reid did. Not the fans of Philadelphia were hating on him. The media was hating on Andy Reid, one of the most beloved coaches in the NFL. Not saying what the dude did was right.
We are not condoning.
Not condoning.
I would like to put that out there right now. We are not condoning any of the actions talked about in this episode. What we're here to talk about is atrocities and the actions committed by certain people. And one of those people was Mike Vick, who served a 2-year sentence, I believe.
Over a 2-year sentence. Like, what does it take? He did his time. Came back, had himself a great career. But
and
he did his fucking time.
I remember people talking about it, and they were upset how Mike Vick was back in the league. And it frustrated me. And at the time, I wasn't even a fan of the NFL. I didn't watch NFL games on the regular. We have discussed this in a previous video that I just became an Eagles fan. That, in fact, I hadn't really watched NFL games until about 6 years ago when I started watching Eagles games with my brother and him. But this all started from our discussion of Mike Vick, what happened with him, and it frustrated me because it was like Cersei's death in Game of Thrones. I don't want to put this on a route of something else, but I've heard a lot of people say they didn't like her death in Game of Thrones, when in all reality she died. To be honest with you, Mike Vick served his sentence. He paid his debt to society. He was at the top of the NFL. He was probably
he had just gone to an NFC Championship game.
So this was a guy
and lost to the Eagles.
Right. This was a guy at the top of the game, the very top. There's only 32 NFL quarterbacks, starting NFL quarterbacks.
Correct.
One of them was Mike Vick, and he was at the top of those 32.
Top four that year.
So when we discuss this topic, we are not condoning the actions of any of these individuals. We're merely here to discuss what happens when an individual makes mistakes, whether they are intentional. I don't want to say mistakes because when an individual makes poor decisions, Mike Vick made poor decisions. He paid his debt to society, and I remember when he came back, first of all, Mike Vick was not the same Mike Vick he left as. But this was a...
Real quick, though, when Mike Vick did come back, he was a third-string quarterback to Donovan McNabb. Behind, so obviously McNabb, Kevin Cobb, and then Michael Vick. They would bring him in for some BS Wildcat plays. When they played the Falcons, they let him play a little more than he typically did. But Mike Vick was a third-string quarterback when he came back. That's it.
And I remember people being they abhorred Mike Vick. Abhored. Abhorred Mike Vick. And I remember asking people, like, does he need to be a gas station worker? Is that what's acceptable for him now? It frustrated me because I didn't feel like Mike Vick was being treated fairly. We were talking about an individual that was incarcerated.
Over 2 years.
That means that he did not go to jail. He went to prison.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how you view prison, it is a horrible, horrible experience for anybody that has to live it. And he came out a changed man. He apologized for his actions, his role in what happened. If you don't know, go look it up. I'm not here to discuss what he did.
See, man, I'm not one to believe everyone who comes out of prison, jail, and acts like they're changed. Mike Vick did his time, realized what he did, came back, and he came back more studious. He came back, mentally.
I remember him coming back humbled by the experience.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Humbled. What else are you supposed to be after? You go to prison, not jail, prison, for over 2 years. You're in the prime of your NFL career.
At the top of the league. Probably a top 5 quarterback.
Top 4, right? He was in the NFC Championship game.
Now for those who don't know. You're probably not clicking on this video if you don't know, but that is the height of some people's careers, is getting there. For a guy to get there, go to prison, come back, and play at the highest level again is amazing.
Had his best season ever. Not in 2009 when Andy Reid took a chance on him, as the media said. 2010, won the starting quarterback position, was the best QB in the league, in the race for MVP vote, came second to the Madden cover athlete behind, I don't even remember his name, the Browns running back, the white guy.
I can't recall.
He was cheeks.
I didn't watch the NFL at the time.
He was cheeks, but
the point being is, at what point do we forgive an individual for their actions?
Mm-hmm.
At what point do we forgive people for the mistakes they made? And once again, I don't want to say mistakes in the sense that they did it accidentally. I want at what point do we forgive people for the missteps they made? And this was just supposed to be a video about Mike Vick, some of the other NFL players, Josh Brown being one of them, and how they treated him as opposed to Ray Rice, Mike Vick, and some of the African-American athletes in the league. Now, what we kind of want to talk about is...
Real quick, though, fuck Josh Brown.
Yeah, for real. That guy,
he beat his wife. I'm sorry, that's worse than beating your dogs. But I digress. Go on.
At what point do we value a human life? Which is the conversation. We put the Vic jerseys on. This was supposed to be exclusively an NFL video, but this sparked a different conversation with us, and we felt the need.
We had a whole episode before the camera even started rolling.
We did. We both had grandparents affected by wars that were started by people that never fought in them. We both have faced troubling years over the last calendar year of the last 365 days. And at a certain point, we need to talk about bigger issues. We have given over $1 billion in aid to Ukraine. which we're not saying we should have not given aid to Ukraine. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying is we like to talk about gun control here in America. We lose, I believe, we looked at the data beforehand. I believe it was 3,300,000 over, just being conservative, Americans a year to illnesses. We do not fund universal health care the way we should. We do not take PTSD from our soldiers the way we should. We have over 550,000 homeless Americans that we do not talk about. These are people that get left behind. We ignore them on the streets.
Hey, let me go a little off script here. How did you feel when we went to the Eagles-Colts game? Walking by the homeless man, unwrapping a burrito to feed his dog. How'd you feel?
It hurt me, man. It hurt me to my soul. It made me disgusted to be an American. The fact that I live on quote unquote the greatest country on earth, and to get to a football game. A football game. This is a game I love. I passionately watch football. I think it's an amazing sport. I love watching it. I don't want to take anything away from football. But it absolutely disgusted me. We walked by more than 5 homeless people on the way to the game, and we only walked on 3 different streets.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost 2 people per street. And that was just me. That was just a conservative estimate on the people there. And this was a man who had his dog wrapped in a scarf and a blanket because it was freezing cold outside. And to know that we have given over $1 billion in aid to Ukraine while we have homeless
Way over
Americans.
$1
It disgusted me, man. It made me sick to my stomach. In fact, on the way out, and it hurt my soul that I didn't do it on the way in. I want to be clear about that. It hurt my soul on the way in. It weighed on me throughout the entire game. And I told him on the way out, if I saw this man again, I was going to give him some money.
And he did. He did.
I didn't have a lot of cash on me, and I spared what I could. I'm not a wealthy person. I'm not somebody who is living far above my means. I'm an average American who is living not paycheck to paycheck, but a little bit above that. And this is the country that houses Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, and Mark Zuckerberg. Just to be clear, the net worth between those 4 individuals is well over easily $200 billion or $300 billion. That is 4 people who have more money than if you earned. We did the math before this game or before this episode. If you earn $10,000 a day, $10,000 a day is a lot. We can all agree.
What was it, like $3.5 million?
You would earn over $3.5 million a year, and from 1776 until now, you still wouldn't have earned over $1 billion. And it hurt me to see that in the land of abundance, we have people struggling. We are trying to get a clear answer on Flint's water situation. I had read a couple different reports. One said that they've had clean water for 6 years now. But just to be clear, in quote unquote, once again, the greatest nation on earth, you had a city who didn't have clean water. And that did not seem to press our government.
And I was telling you off camera, Who doesn't have clean water? Third world countries. And as you said, apparently the United States.
What does that mean for us? What does that mean for us? Well, I think we need to take a long look in the mirror as Americans. We need to take a long, hard look at what we consider to be the standard of living in America. And when we talk about world hunger, let's just forget world hunger for a moment. We were reading beforehand from several different websites who are supposed to be authorities on this topic that over 10 million children suffer from hunger. I forget what the term is, but nutrition issues in America.
They're not getting fed enough. And as a father,
how does that make you feel as a father?
That shit makes me sad. I'm to the point, like, as a father, like, when something sad comes up on the TV about a child and a father, it makes me sad. And reading something like that, dude, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Can you imagine? So, like, imagine if your little boy wasn't getting fed enough, was looking like a Holocaust survivor because you couldn't afford to put food on the table.
Mind you, this is a child that does not have medical issues. This is a child that does not have a mental illness that requires extreme attention or any attention at all. He's actually a very bright child. So when I look at...
Like, picture the Don, right? Like, not every parent is going to be... I'm going to be cocky. Not every parent is going to be a baller, right? Like his father.
It's very true.
And I could easily be that homeless guy walking into the Colts stadium. Imagine if you don't have family. Say your parents passed away at a young age. You go into the foster care system. You get out of it. You're working at a fast food chain. You can't afford an apartment because fucking rent is $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 a month. Like, do you not understand how easily that could have been me or you or anyone we know?
I would like to take a moment and acknowledge that we are blessed. We have been blessed. I mean, this is a man that has... I mean, I not even me. I've been blessed on so many ways. So many ways it's unimaginable. I cannot fathom the struggles that people go through. But this is a man sitting next to me that has worked. Our other co-host is another individual who has worked tirelessly. I believe both of you moved out at 18.
Correct.
You've been supporting yourself for a very long while. It's not an easy thing to do. Yes, you had a child young, but you stepped up to the plate. You have supported your child in every facet. He does not go without. But this is not the case for every American. And right now we are here to talk about those people.
That's what I'm saying. I could easily be one of those people.
Looking at the CDC for 2020, we had almost 700,000 people die of heart disease in America. Over 600,000 died of cancer. Over 160,000 died to stroke. Over 150,000 died to chronic lower respiratory diseases. 135,000 almost died to Alzheimer's disease. 102,000 to diabetes. Influenza and pneumonia took 53,500 people from us. These are issues that we don't talk about. We want to talk about abortion and gun control, and it makes me sick to my stomach because these are hot button topics. They're things that are going to get you clicks online, but they're not going to solve anything. We are not curing Americans' issues. If even if we took away, let's just say you'd never had a gun in America ever again. I believe the 2020 data was less than 50,000. We're going to round up. I believe it was 42,000. 50,000 deaths would be prevented.
What was it?
Over half of those were suicides, but let's just say
what was it? Over half of gun deaths were suicides.
I believe it was 52%.
If you're gonna kill yourself, you're gonna kill yourself.
Which raises the issue of, I had a grandfather who was in World War II. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. I never was able to meet the man because he perished before I got here, well before I got here. It weighed on my mom. It was her father. Weighed on her heavily. And when I think about it, she discusses being sent to a room because he would have flashbacks at the dinner table because we didn't take mental health serious enough. We sent young men to die for the country. He had 2 ships bombed out from under him. He was floating in the sea with his dead friends, his dead co-workers, sailors, whatever you would like to call them. He struggled from the mental weight of that issue. And I believe you said you had several grandfathers who fought in Vietnam, correct?
Yeah. So 3 grandfathers served in Vietnam.
We would never commit suicide.
No. Never.
Just to be clear on this topic.
And to set the record straight, my computer miraculously restarted.
We had a 30-minute episode that we were going to stitch with
the other 25-minute episode.
We got on a topic of U.S. foreign aid. Mm-hmm. We got into a topic of some very heavy stuff. Yasiel Puig being prosecuted by the DOJ, AOC going after Elon on Twitter. Not to interrupt his story, I don't want to diminish any of that, but we had recorded a over 30-minute part of this episode. His computer told us we had an error. It proceeded to do an update at the same time.
Yep.
After telling us we had an error. That's why the computer shut down.
Never happened before. Ever.
So just to be clear about that, we are continuing from, we have been trying to record this episode for well over an hour now. But just to be clear, we talked about Nancy Pelosi and her husband using their information.
Refresh me on their net worth and what their annual income is.
So Nancy Pelosi is paid about less than $250,000 per year to be Speaker of the House, which I believe she just stepped down from. And she has a net worth of approximately anywhere from $43 to $220 million. Her net worth listed was $120 million for somebody who makes less than $250,000 a year.
And Yasiel Puig?
Makes about $7 million a year, has a net worth of $18 million a year. Mm-hmm. We had talked about the hot button topics of how we go after gun control, but we do not talk about the fact that I believe heart disease killed about 700,000 Americans in 2020. Cancer killed about 600,000. Pneumonia and influenza took over 50,000 Americans. And I believe in 2020, I'd have to look this up again, but I believe the gun deaths totaled about 45,000 Americans. And we had done a little bit of talking about the fact that we are not pursuing universal health care here in America. We had given over $60 billion in foreign aid. We have planned to spend over $770 billion in the defense budget next year. So yeah, we had touched on some hot topics, and we out of nowhere received an error message. The computer restarted, saved the video, but the file was corrupted. But yeah, the DOJ is prosecuting Yasiel Puig for betting on MLB games. As an NBA player, an NFL player, or an MLB player, you're not allowed to bet on games. And somehow, as a federal politician, you are allowed to invest in stocks. If you violate the Stock Act, which gives you a 45-day period to report your trades, you can violate that with seemingly no repercussions. Mind you, if you violate a federal law, you are a felon who goes to prison. As we touched on, Mike Vick went to prison for what he did. He had paid his debt to society. We both had grandfathers who served in World War II, and we had you had another grandfather. Two grandfathers?
Yeah, so 2 great-grandfathers served in World War II. To finish my fucking story, before it's cut me off twice now. 2 grandfathers served in World War II. Great-grandfather served in World War II. I had 2 grandfathers served in Vietnam. 1 great-grandfather served in Vietnam. 2 of which have suffered plenty of emotional trauma from Vietnam, because you and I both know, and the people know, what they had to fucking go through. I don't know if the last video, I don't remember which video got it. Go watch Rambo. Okay? Go watch it. Man comes home from Vietnam, is rejected by his country for the things that his country made him do. Okay? Scarred to this day in 2022, suffering health problems from shit that happened in the late 60s, early 70s, to now, in 2022, 50 years later.
And for what?
It's heartbreaking. For what? For what was it? What was it called, Neil?
Military conflict.
Yes.
Our own government does not acknowledge it as a war.
Because we got bodied. Because we had no business of being there.
And we said that we just hope that the next generation does not have to go through. I touched a little bit on my mom and her father, my dad and his father.
Did that not get? Was that on camera?
That was on the second video.
Say it again.
They both of my grandfathers perished from, call it what you will, PTSD weighed heavily on both of them. And my mom specifically tells stories about how her father used to, my grandfather, would have flashbacks to after, this is years later, after World War II. He had 2 ships bombed out from under him. He was floating in the water with his friends, fellow sailors, and it traumatized him to the point that this man at dinner would have PTSD moments, and he was traumatized by it. We did not take it seriously what these young men went through. Our co-host is a young man. we went over this a little bit in the video that got deleted, apparently. He is a kid. He is a 20-year-old young man who it would be the equivalent of him carrying. You know what? I don't even want to tell the story. I want you to tell, and I'm sorry to your grandfather for telling one of his stories.
That apparently will never be seen.
They lived through very traumatic experiences, to the point that it traumatized them for life. These were tough men. These were men that you would respect. Not even just for their war credentials, their military conflict credentials. These were hardworking American citizens, and they had to deal with the baggage that our country left on them. And it left a hole in our families. It left
Once again, from late 60s to early 70s to now. That shit affects me now. Shit affects you now.
My grandfather lost it at the end. He did not commit suicide. He did not take his own life, but it is something that weighed on him for the rest of his life since he was a young man. And I don't want to tell your story, but I would like you to tell that story that you told again, if you would.
Will. So, my grandfather, my mom's father, served in Vietnam, still suffers plenty.
Young man. Young
younger
kid.
Than me.
Young kid.
Yeah.
He was a kid. Let's.
Yeah, don't get it twisted.
We talk about college athletes as being kids. Let's not get it twisted. Let's not beat around the bush. This was a freshly deemed adult, and he had to go through possibly the most traumatic of experiences. I can't even fathom. We went over this in the last video. There's a 4-year age gap between me and my co-host sitting here with me, and between him and our co-host who is not with us currently. There's a 4-year age gap between us. And you know what? I'm sorry. I will continue with your story, please.
It's fine. My grandfather, still suffering from health conditions from Vietnam, Agent Orange, and etc. Operated a tank, right? Operated a tank in Vietnam. The tank was blown up. My grandfather took shrapnel to his fucking head. Scar to this day. Tank was blown up.
Physically scarred.
Physically. Also, his brother, my uncle, just side note, got sniped in his shoulder in Vietnam.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah. But my grandfather, after his tank was blown up, carried out his best friend, the equivalent of me carrying out Neil out of a tank. Carried out his dead best friend with a piece of shrapnel in the middle of his forehead. Carried him out of a blown up tank. His dead best friend. For what? For what? Military act?
For the fear of communism.
Yeah. And you know who won the fucking war?
Not
Not
us.
who we were helping. So.
This is something that has scarred our family for generations. We are not. We went over this a little bit, I believe, in the video that we did not cover, or that will never see the light of day.
Yeah. Corrupted.
we on the way to the Indianapolis Colts game, we passed a man who was homeless, and he unwrapped a Taco Bell burrito and gave his dog first dibs.
That was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
It weighs heavily on my soul. It did for the entire game. On the way out, I mentioned to this man sitting beside me that if we saw him, I would give him some money. This is not what this story is about. We did actually see him. I did give him some money. I don't want that to be what this video is about. This video is not about our charitable donations, our charitable acts in any way, shape, or form. This is a video about how we as Americans need to be more aware of what has happened, what is happening. On a side note, this is something that still weighs on me to this day. It's about 8 years ago. I was in a communications class, and we had to give a presentation. And one of the guys in my class, he was in Iraq, and he talked about what it was like to be mortared. And I watched a grown man cry in front of a group of his peers because he was that traumatized by what had happened. And I'm not somebody that gets teary-eyed. I can watch a movie with sad parts. I empathize. I really do. I got pulled from a class watching, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Selma, Lord Selma. It's a movie about the civil rights movement, and they called my mom. I was about 11 at the time, and we were watching Selma, Lord Selma. It was about MLK, and they pulled me out because I was so angry. I was so angry. I was in tears. They pulled me out. They called my mom. And they said, well, he's crying. And he wants to keep watching the movie. And my mom said, well, what do you want me to do? Basically. And they're like, well, we just want to know what you want us to do. And she's like, well, if he wants to keep watching the movie, let him keep watching the movie. And I remember my frustration came as I was watching this movie. I looked around at my class of peers. Mind you, this is from the 1940s, I believe. Mm-hmm. Not the movie, but the actions that it recounted. And my classmates were sitting there watching the movie, and none of them seemed visibly upset by what was going on. And it bothered me to my core. It bothered me to my core that I could sit in a group of people who, and they didn't seem moved the same way I did. They didn't seem upset with the actions that fellow Americans had taken not 100 years prior. It struck me in a way that I cannot explain to this day, that as an 11-year-old, I was unfathomably, to the point that, I'm somebody that to give context, I didn't cry when either of my grandmothers died. I didn't meet either of my grandfathers. They both died well before I was born. My dad barely had a relationship with his dad. My mom's dad died when she was younger than me, probably close to your age or Eli's. And I watched both of my grandmas die before I was 15. I didn't cry when either of them passed. They both passed from what I deem to be medical issues that could have been prevented or deterred, that I would have been able to get an extended period with them. And I, to this day, remember thinking how vehemently awful, so disgusted, so appalling that these actions were. And we're sitting here talking about AOCs going at Elon Musk on Twitter. Elon Musk is a Twitter shit poster. I want to be clear about that. This man is a verifiable genius in his own right. He has done amazing things, but when it comes to the actions taken by my fellow Americans, when I see that we don't take universal health care seriously, you recently have lost. I don't want to touch on a subject that I know is near and dear to your heart, but this is a heavy episode, and I know that this is what we got into this. We started this off as an episode that was supposed to be kind of lighthearted. We were going to talk about the NFL. That's why we're both wearing Mike Vick jerseys. And it was going to be about the debts paid to society and when we forgive an individual. When are we going to expect more of our government?
Yeah, and so to follow up on what you were going to say, I know you didn't want to tell my story, but lost two grandfathers this year. One being earlier in 2022. Died of nothing to do with COVID. Got sick of nothing to do with COVID. Went to the hospital, nothing to do with COVID. When he passed away, what did he die from? COVID-19. Big fucking surprise. My great grandfather just passed. His power went out. He had breathing problems. He lost power. Therefore, he lost his oxygen tank. Therefore, he couldn't breathe. Therefore, he passed away. This goes to show you where, better use of our money could be spent. Instead of spending 30, 40 billion on Ukraine aid, what about spending 5 billion of that on electric?
We touched on this in the episode.
Lives could be saved. That's all I'm saying.
You were telling
but
me,
it ain't gonna shut us up. That's all I'm saying.
You were talking about how Neon Dion, prime time,
Deion Sanders,
and a former NFL player, a college football coach, a guy who, a lot feel, I feel like it's split 50-50. There's a lot of people that don't like Neon Dion. But this is a guy who...
I have no respect for you if you don't respect primetime.
So what the topic was in relation to, I'll let you tell the story because I don't know it as well as you, but the topic that it was related to was Flint, Michigan has apparently had clean water for about 6 years. Mm-hmm. And the discussion we had before this video ever cut on, for the first half of this video was recorded, before the second half got deleted, we touched on Flint, Michigan. The fact that Flint, Michigan did not have clean water. This is an issue that third world countries face.
Yeah, as I said, that's what you would think third world countries would face, not America.
And to which I responded, apparently also in America.
Yeah, apparently.
That federal, state, and local governments apparently didn't deem big enough of an issue. And then how Neon Dion came into topic was Jackson, Mississippi faced a similar issue, to which I will let you expand on a little bit further.
Jackson, Mississippi faced their own water crisis, and, thank God that Jackson State had the GOAT NFL defensive back. Also, arguably, is it even arguably the best athlete ever,
If
played
not,
in a World Series and in the NFL in the same week. I mean, come on. But Deion Sanders is Jackson State's head coach. They faced this water crisis. You know what he did out of his own pocket? He went and got them hotels, made sure that his team had water, clean water, proper water, accessibility, so
so
they
it's
could take
up.
showers, so they could drink water after practice, so they had proper living conditions. In Jackson State, also, you know what Jackson State just did? Had their first undefeated season ever. Okay?
Shout out to Neon Dion.
Yeah.
At what point does it? I mean, we have, and I listed this in the last episode. I had numbers available to me at the time. I don't feel like looking them up anymore. But you had Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Warren Buffett, who totaled in wealth over $300 billion between four people. And we, as a country, had two cities who did not have clean drinking water. I just want to be clear. I never look at the camera. I pretty much, focus on something else. But I want to say it disgusted me as an American citizen, as an American point blank period. You know what? I'm gonna pull it back up. Because this bothered me to my core. That I have loved this nation since I was a kid. I think that we have so many problems here, but I believe this is etched in the Statue of Liberty. It says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." When did we become a nation of cowards, of people scared of so many things? When did we go from "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free"? This is America to me, and yet we have over 550,000 homeless people in America right now. That is unfathomable. Not only is it unfathomable, it's abhorrent to me.
Hey, bro,
It is
all
disgusting.
Goes back to the man giving his dog a Taco Bell burrito.
It does. And for this guy to potentially be a vet, I didn't stop to ask him his story. I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. I gave him the money that I had to give. I'm not a well-off American. I'm not somebody who has billions of dollars. I'm sickened by the lack of care we show to another human being in this country. I think it's the words escape me to describe how sickened I am by the fact that the national defense budget is so high, and we have 10 million children in this country. 10 million. 10 million.
Disgusting.
Think about that number.
Disgusting.
It's more than live in the state.
Wow.
And they are improperly fed. It makes me sick to my stomach. I almost hate to be an American. The fact that we have people dying to cancer, to heart disease, to pneumonia and influenza, which in a nation that claims to be so for civil liberties and the health and safety of its citizens that we have these issues. I can't even begin to fathom why these are issues. The fact that your great-grandfather, correct? The one on the oxygen. Mm-hmm. The fact that we don't have a system set up to make sure that critical life support systems are kept online for people like him. And yes, you may hop in the comment section. You may do whatever trolling you need to do. That's fine. The issue still remains that these are preventable. We talk about, we could have prevented these deaths. If you want to talk about gun control, we need to talk about universal health care. We need to talk about that first. We need to talk about universal health care first. We need to talk about fixing the homeless population first. We need to talk about feeding these children before we ever even remotely begin to talk about gun control. Look, I'm a second right. I love the Second Amendment. I do. It's an amazing amendment. But the fact that we have children starving in America, A, because we don't pay people enough, B, because we don't care enough. And I'm calling you out, America. I'm calling you out. If you think this is, I discussed this in the episode we lost, the portion of this episode that we lost. I asked Eli one time, in the multiverse theory, do you think this is the best that you can do? And he said, yes. And I said, and that doesn't bother you? That this is the best you can do? This is something that I live with every day of my life, that I can do better than I did today. The last 24-hour stretch, I could have done more. I could have done better, and it bothers me. In America, the fact that you are not bothered by the fact that people are dying as I'm speaking right now, the fact that there's some child in America starving, I don't know what to say. The quote-unquote greatest country on the face of the earth, and this is the best that we have to offer, that is unfathomable to me. It's disgusting to me. It makes me sick to my stomach. It bothers me. I lose sleep over this kind of stuff. The fact that these are preventable deaths, these are preventable illnesses, these are preventable issues that we face, and we can't seem to come to grips. And you can blame the Republican Party, you can blame the Democrats, you can do whatever you want. But until you realize that AOC is on Twitter talking trash to Elon Musk. First of all, why are my politicians on Twitter? Why on earth are my politicians on Twitter? I wonder why in the heck James Harden was at the strip club when his team was down 3-0 or 3-1 in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And yet I need to question why my politicians are on Twitter instead of doing things. I know that every 24 hours of the day can't be spent doing work. I understand that. But I'm looking at you, America. This is the best we have to offer. This is the definition of... Let me read it back to you, America. Let me be clear. This is what we portray as what we are.
Yeah, give to us, and then I'm gonna give us a send-off here.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, which there are more than 550,000 of here, by the way. Tempest tossed to me, I lift my lamp beside the golden door. And this is the best I have. This is the best I can offer to the people, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. This is the best that I can offer them is, well, at least you're not starving in a different country. That's the best that we can do. Oh, if you come here, just don't move to Flint or Jackson. Don't move to Flint, Michigan or Jackson, Mississippi. That's the best that we can do. This is the best. This is not the best. We need to take a long, hard look in the mirror, America. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't have that right now. But I do know that this is not the best that we can do. And I'm very sorry that this reality check is where it came from.
Well said. Well said. I mean, here on the More to Us podcast, we just added a little more to the conversation that nobody wants to talk about.
They do not.
They might have tried to stop us. We just fucking re-recorded the video. So, like we said, we lost this video. We re-recorded the video. The More to Us podcast is here to talk about the things that the public, that the society does not want to talk about.
That we
break
ignore.
it down a little more than your average, typical human American podcast would do on the More to Us podcast. Thanks for joining in. Unless you, Neil, have anything else to say, I think this is a good wrapping point.
I do not. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. We love America, and
Let's be better.
we can do better. We need to do better. Unfortunately, this is the More to Us podcast discussing a very hard topic that is close to home for both of us. And we love America. We like to reiterate that we would not commit suicide. As much of a joke as that is, in all seriousness, we love America, and we realize that we need to do, not just that we need to do better. This can't be the best that we have to offer everybody. We talk about leading by example. Is 550,000 homeless people leading by example?
No. You know what's sad?
10 million starving children leading by example.
What sparked this conversation? Michael Vick. It all leads back to Michael Vick. All right, let's take our thoughts and our worries off Michael Vick, someone who did his time years ago, who did 2 years.
Paid his debt to society.
Paid his debts. Get your brain out of the gutter. More to Us podcast. Tune in next time.